Well, it said leave, not live in the lower right corner. My mistake. All right, Conference Committee for House Bill 195, also known as the ARPA bill. There was a handful of differences. Not on a conference committee. And really this biggest difference on the Senate was the Senate removes $9 million from a community project and puts that money into the water sewer projects. They remove the Goshen reversions and then they add a Goshen County irrigation project reversions to pay for it if desired. And then they add a section. The Senate adds a section that says all reversions of the ARPA funds would go to the HHS, Health and Human Services capital construction projects that are noted in footnote 16. So those are the differences. And so as we know, in a conference committee, being the first conference committee, we have to work between the differences. And with that, I don't know if anyone on the committee has any proposals.
So I think that's a fair recap. I might go back through and recap a little bit more, but I wanted to make sure one thing. On page 21, line 16, local government facilities. Now, starting on page 21, this section 401 is all new language. This is not amendment of the prior Senate File 66. And there's shown there $9 million with a footnote 7. And footnote 7 is on page 24, but it calls out $4 million.
Mr. Chairman, it says a maximum grant for any single project will not exceed $4 million. Meaning that there could be and hopefully would be multiple projects.
And Mr. Co-Chair, it's Mr. Co-Chair, it's not just money to local government facilities. If you'd done that, I don't think we would have objected. It's the earmark, and it's an odd earmark. This appropriation is to SLIB for administrative costs and merit-based allocation and competitive granting. Cities, counties, for capital development of community facilities that can serve as a meeting area that can accommodate at least 400 persons in the event of an emergency and that are located in a designated urban renewal or redevelopment area, so forth. So it's clearly, it's not just it's an earmark. I mean, let's just call it what it is. It's an earmark. And there's plenty of money in there in the local community funding that anybody who's interested in doing this kind of project in urban development, 400 persons, could apply and get in line with everybody else. This note is clearly intended to try and push these projects ahead of others that have, colored between the lines and, followed the process, submitted their applications. And so I think that's the problem that gets us high centered a little bit is this clearly is a call out for a particular community or communities. And that's something the Senate has resisted throughout this process. If it was $9 million for local government community facilities, we'd be fine. It's the footnote that's the bothersome part.
Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead, Tom.
Go ahead, Sherwood.
Thank you. Is there a suggested amendment to the footnote?
Well, our amendment was to strike it and leave the money there for local government facilities generally. projects that, in fact, Mr. Co-Chair and Representative Sherwood, and you may have had some that the SLIB just met last week for 2 days, looking through hundreds of grants for local government community facilities. Interesting enough, I asked them if any had been for a community facility that would accommodate at least 400 persons within a net urban renewal or redevelopment area. And they said, no such grants had been submitted. So I'm not even sure why this is in here. If whatever interested communities are interested enough, they would have submitted an application. They didn't bother to submit an application.
Mr. Chairman, I'm gonna say there's a little inaccuracy in your statement in that your preference is to strike this and put it in the local governments. You strike it correct, but you don't put it in the local governments. You put it in the water sewer program.
Oh, well, Mr. Co-Chair, if you'd like it to go into local government.
Just wanted to make sure that we're accurate when we're.
Yeah, well, Mr.
making-
Co-Chair, if you're willing to strike 7 and put the money into the local government facilities, we'd be amenable to that. I think there's plenty of money that's gone into water and sewer. I think Representative Nicholas said, what, 360 million? I think that was your number. It's a big number. So we're amenable to leaving the money to go into local government facilities. I think, right? Yeah. There's a big list of those projects that didn't get funded.
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead.
just for clarification, are we talking about moving the 9 million into the local government support projects, which is currently an existing program that SLIB and OSLI is administering? My understanding is the local government community facilities would be a new program, and I'm comfortable either way. I just want to make sure we're all on the same page.
Mr. Co-Chair, I'm going to have to defer to staff on that. I thought they were both the same thing. I didn't realize they're 2 different programs.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Co-Chairman, footnote 7 that you referenced, the 9 million, that's a new program in section 3 for community facilities. The amendment that the Senate adopted, and I think that sheet you have actually put reduced it by 9 million because at the time, if you recall, the ARPA direct funds were overspent. But the Senate reduced it by 3 million to 6 million and then further amended it and placed that 6 million into local government support projects on page 4, line 33.
So, Mr. Co-Chair, Hank, is local government support projects different than local government community facilities? I thought this footnote 7 was actually a subset of local government support projects.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Co-Chairman, the way I read it, those are different programs, and that's mainly based on the fact that if you'll recall last session, when the local government support projects, and as you noted, Mr. Co-Chairman, the SLIB did meet on Monday and Tuesday of this week, and they did allocate that $50 million that was given to them. I believe the number I saw that they got for non-water sewer projects, which were prioritized higher than water sewer, was in the 700,000, almost 800,000 range. And the rest, I believe, went to water and sewer projects. So these are different programs, but this, and I'll defer to Mr. Fuller on the subset, but I believe that's a fair statement.
Yes. So Mr. Chairman, Chairman Kensky, the language in this, so I'll start with the new program, the 9 million program. What the language says is competitive grant funding for capital development of community facilities. That's on page 24 of the engrossed copy. Then if you go to page 12 of the engrossed copy, footnote 17. Yep.
I'm getting it. Okay.
Mr. Chairman, the language there is, the appropriation is for competitive grant funding to address the COVID-19 public health emergency or its negative economic impacts. So that's the difference in language between the existing program and this new program that was in footnote 7 of the engrossed copy.
So, Mr. Co-Chair, Brian. So what I'm calling local government support projects, that's on page 12, footnote 17. This is the one that says it's local government support projects, capital construction, correct?
Mr. Chairman, this one, I'm not sure if you look at that language on lines 6 through 14, you know, it does not expressly mention capital construction. Now subsection B, which is inserted and appropriated $5 million, does mention infrastructure.
Okay. But this is the one, and Mr. Co-Chair, this is the one I always had in mind. We did one that was called local infrastructure, water and sewer, local infrastructure, water and sewer not preferred.
Yep. And Mr. Chairman, footnote 18 is the water and wastewater projects, the sewer projects.
Mr. Chairman, 17 is the local government water not preferred based on your language.
Yeah. So thank you, Representative Sherwood. So I guess what I'm saying is if you want that 9 million to go back into local government support projects, we're amenable to that.
Chairman,
Yeah.
and really a question for Hank. Their first amendment was to try and true up the account because the House had overspent. But then they moved 6 million and then the local government support, take the 9 million out, and then they move another 9.3 million to water projects. So that is 15 million. And yet, so that's more than the 9 million they took out, and we were overspent already. So I'm trying to figure out where their new money came back in to create 9 million available for the eligible sewer water project.
It was the failure of the one of the water bills.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Co-Chairman, that's correct. So if you'll recall, Senate File 82 did not make it out of committee on the House side, and that had 9.3 in that foot. It had 39.3 million in it, but it was reduced dollar for dollar, whatever was in this. So the net of that program was 9.3 million in Senate File 82. Throughout the process, that bill died. And so that's where that 9.3 million was added in. So if you look at your goldenrod today, there's $626,000 left in the ARPA account as it stands today.
So, Mr. Co-Chair, the way I understand it, to recap, the House over appropriated, they put 9 million into this local government community facilities. They were over by 3. We subtracted 3. That put it in balance. Subsequently, we subtracted the full 6 and so that made 6 available. And then the 9.3 was added in by Senator Steinmetz, which puts you roughly at 15.3 million was added back. Yeah. So I see these urban 400-seat theater as being able to fit into a local government support project. You know, that clearly falls within it. It's the carving out of this whole new category that clearly is intended for 1 or 2 communities that is an earmark. But if you want to put that money, if you want to put the entire 15 million back into local government support projects, that's fine. Your communities, whatever community, yeah.
Basically here. And so to say that there are some earmarks you like and some that you don't. If the House side likes it, then we want our share, part of ours to be here. And whatever you guys want, you guys can do. The point is, how do we find a compromise between our positions?
Well, Mr. Co-Chair and Representative Nicholas, if you're considering something that says local government support projects as an earmark, that's very broad in nature. When you get down to something that is so specific, a 400-seat theater located in urban renewal, that clearly is intended to favor 1 or 2 particular communities over all the other grant applicants. So it's one thing to have a rather broad allocation to water, sewer, local government, and it's another thing to just so specifically describe a project that you know that there's only one or two communities that can even apply. That's the difference.
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead.
I would like to suggest that we consider an amendment on page 24 that would remove the language in regards to accommodating at least 400 people. So I believe then that would open up these funds to more communities.
Would you be amenable to eliminating designated urban renewal as well?
Maybe. My thought on that is that most centers of communities are in either urban renewal or redevelopment areas. So I guess I could go either way on that.
I'm trying to think, I don't think Gillette has one. Sheridan doesn't have one. Buffalo doesn't have one. I don't know
Mr.
about
Chairman,
Most.
Go ahead.
I think redevelopment area is broad enough to include things like all of our URAs, urban renewal areas, DDAs, downtown development authorities, main streets, of which the majority of our communities do have some sort of version of that program. So maybe it could read, so starting on line 9, page 24, capital development of community facilities that can serve as a meeting area in the event of an emergency and that are located in redevelopment areas.
I guess I'm not even sure what emergency adds. Let me see. Meeting area emergency. So, Mr. Co-Chair, Representative Sherwood, go back and name those things that you did. I know what an urban renewal is. That's something the city council has to officially do. Redevelopment area is something a city council has to officially do. Then you named some other kinds of areas. What were those?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, a DDA is a downtown development authority. That is also approved by local government. And then our Main Street programs are applications are submitted by local government and then approved by the business council. And again, I think I could go either way on that suggestion of whether or not we keep the redevelopment area language in.
Well, let us visit a little bit. Before we go to Representative Sherwood's proposal. I wanna
We're
make
back.
sure-
We're back in action. Okay. Just got to get the computer live. So thanks for the pause. We're ready. Go ahead, Senator.
Are we agreed on all the other Senate amendments? If we can come to an accommodation on this footnote 7, are we agreed on everything else?
Well, it depends what we come to an agreement on the footnote that you're discussing, then we can.
Well,
Because
we're looking at
the-
something like Representative Sherwood proposed. If we can come to agreement on that, are we agreed on everything else?
Why don't you go out and run our new idea by?
We're gonna take another pause.
Was this just me and Tom?
Yes.
Come into my office.
I will. Okay, as soon as we're live. Okay, we're back in business. Again, House Bill 195, the ARPA bill, Joint Conference Committee. So the Senate makes a total of $15.3 million in changes based on what they did, taking the 9 million out of the one program and adding balancing it. So then you end up with 6 because the House was over appropriated, and then the 9.3 from another bill that did not make it through the process, for a total of about 15.3 if my math on the spot is correct. So the proposal that this House would put forward is, if you go to page 12, there's footnote 17. And it relates to the program on page 4, line 32, local government support projects. So our House proposal would be to put all 15.3 million into local government support projects. In doing that, we would remove on page 24, the footnote 7, as well as on page 21, line 16, the local government community facilities. So that they're related to one another. So that's
The footnote.
the line, page 21, line 16 is the funding, and then the footnote is on page 24 that goes with that funding. Make sure everyone's tracking so far.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman. So the $15 million would go into the support, city support group. That can be any town project. That's what, those are water projects, sewer projects, and other.
So, Mr. Chairman, that's the item that water and sewer are a lower priority.
Right.
It's all other projects take the higher priority in that account.
In that account.
And it's an account we set up a year ago.
Right. Okay.
And Mr. Co-Chair, so part of that is that 15.3 all going into local government support projects means the Senate put some portion of it into water and sewer and elsewhere. We're going to put it all into local government support.
Correct, Mr. Chairman. And so that I'd have to ask staff to make all those technical changes to make all that work out. And I think they can figure that out for us fairly easy, but conceptually, we would end up with 15.3 million going into the local government community support projects, which is tied to footnote number 17. That would be the total amount there. Mr. Fuller, is that all making sense? You'd make it all work out in terms of the deletions and the added
Correct.
additions?
Correct, Mr. Chairman. If I may just add one thing, there was in one of the Senate amendments, it's the standing committee amendment, technical corrections on page 10.
We'll get to that.
Okay.
We'll get to that. Yes, thank you. And so that's what we would do there. The other thing we would propose is the Senate adds language to have all of the reversions would revert to the HHS Capital Construction Grant Program. And we would like to, on an equal basis, split that 50-50 with HHS and water sewer.
Okay.
And I think because
Yeah,
it's
that's the
language.
split. Yep.
Because it's language, I think that's between the positions because we have no discussion of reversions and you do. So I think we could add that in, and maybe it's a little gray, but we're gonna do it.
So Mr. Co-Chair, let me recap. Page 24, footnote 7 goes away. 15.3 goes into page 12, local government support projects. And then the current reversion, which goes all to HHS cap on, goes 50-50 between water and sewer and HHS cap. Is that correct?
Correct. And then the final piece would be the technical correction from staff on page 10. And it's, they need to add subsections A through C on line 1 of page 10.
Wasn't that in the Senate's amendment?
Mr. Chairman, Chairman Kinsky, it would be a change to line 1 that was not in any of the Senate amendments, but that is a technical correction. And then also lines 21 and 22. which were in the Senate Standing Committee amendment.
And we would consider that technical in nature and not trying to,
So that was the insertion of subsections A through C of and subsections A through C of on
Correct.
lines 21 and 22.
That's correct, Mr. Chairman.
Yep. Good. I think we're agreed.
okay? So I think the next step is staff will write this up. And then I'll either get it or they'll get it and come find all of us and we'll get it signed and hopefully be done this afternoon.
Okay, so what do you think you need, Brian? 10 minutes or?
Give me just a smidge longer, Mr. Chairman.
Fortunately, I think you already had a preliminary something or other drafted.